I was only 19 years old when my father looked into my eyes and quietly whispered, "Never trust your younger brother, because the day I am gone, he will smile in front of everyone while stealing everything I have built with my own hands." I thought my father was simply worried about the future, but 3 weeks later he died from a sudden heart attack, and our entire family gathered inside our New York mansion pretending to cry while my younger brother Daniel welcomed every guest with fake tears and fake sympathy. The moment the funeral ended, he walked straight into my father's private office, changed every security code, locked every cabinet, and announced to the whole family that from today he was the new owner of Harrison Global Industries, worth more than $6 billion. Everyone clapped for him while I stood silently in the corner, because I knew my father would never leave his life's work to someone who cared only about money. Daniel walked toward me with a smile, placed his hand on my shoulder, and whispered, "Pack your bags, because by tomorrow morning, this house will no longer belong to you." My stepmother laughed. My uncle called me useless. My cousins mocked my old clothes, and even the family lawyer refused to answer my questions. Before leaving the mansion, I quietly entered my father's bedroom one last time, where I noticed his old leather watch lying on the bedside table. Underneath it was a tiny folded note written in his handwriting: "If you are reading this, then everything happened exactly as I expected. Do not fight them. Do not argue with anyone. Leave this house immediately, because the Real inheritance is not inside this mansion. It is hidden where only you and I know how to look." I folded the note, put the watch into my pocket, picked up my single backpack, and walked out of the mansion, while every member of my family watched me leave with smiles on their faces. None of them knew they had just celebrated far too early, because my father's biggest secret had never been inside the mansion, and the day I found it, every person who betrayed me would beg for forgiveness, but it would already be too late. I drove for 6 hours without knowing where I was going, until I reached the small lakeside cabin where my father had taken me every summer since childhood. The cabin looked abandoned, but I remembered he always said the safest place is the one nobody thinks is valuable. I unlocked the old wooden door using the same rusty key that still hung around my neck, and everything inside was exactly the way we had left it years ago. I searched every room for hours, but found nothing, until I noticed my father's favorite painting hanging slightly crooked on the wall. I lifted it and discovered a hidden steel safe behind it. Inside the safe was a black folder, a silver flash drive, several company seals, and another handwritten letter. My hands trembled as I opened it. My father wrote, "If Daniel is controlling the company now, then he has already fallen into the trap I created years ago. The businesses he believes he owns are drowning in debt, while the Real empire was quietly transferred into another holding company known only to you. Every original ownership document, every bank authorization, every international contract is inside this folder, along with the only digital key capable of activating the transfer the moment you are ready. Take this flash drive to Harrison Trust Bank and ask for Director William Carter. He has been waiting for this day for many years." Tears filled my eyes, because for the first time since my father's death, I realized he had protected me until his very last breath, while Daniel celebrated inside the mansion, believing he had won everything. I drove straight to Harrison Trust Bank, where the security guards immediately escorted me to the top floor. After seeing the silver seal, Director Carter stood up the moment I entered the room, shook my hand with respect, and said, "Your father instructed us never to contact you unless you walked through this door carrying that folder. Today, the real owner of Harrison Global finally returns." Then he placed a confidential file on the table, opened it slowly, and revealed a number that made my heart stop, because the hidden companies my father had protected for me were worth more than $15 billion, and Daniel had absolutely no idea that within the next few days, every company he believed he controlled would legally disappear from his hands. Director Carter slowly pushed another confidential folder toward me and quietly said, "Your father prepared every document years before his death, because he knew exactly how Daniel would behave the moment he believed he had unlimited power." I opened the folder and discovered signed agreements proving That every important client, every international patent, every profitable company, and every controlling share had already been transferred into my private holding corporation. Years earlier, Daniel had inherited nothing more than empty buildings unpaid, loans and failing businesses, while the real fortune had been protected. In complete secrecy, Carter then connected the silver flash drive to a secure computer, and within seconds, dozens of digital contracts appeared on the screen. Every document carried my father's signature together, with legal approvals from banks, government agencies, and international regulators. Carter smiled and said, "The moment you approve this transfer, every board member around the world will receive notification that you are now the legal chairman of Harrison Global Holdings." I took a deep breath, remembered my father's final words, and pressed the confirmation button. At that exact moment, thousands of emails were automatically sent across the world, while company headquarters in New York, London, Singapore, Dubai, and Tokyo simultaneously updated the name of their new owner. My phone immediately began ringing. Nonstop executives introduced themselves, one after another, congratulating me and requesting emergency meetings because the global media had already discovered the transfer. Meanwhile, inside the family mansion, Daniel proudly gathered investors, journalists, and board members, announcing himself as the permanent chairman. He stood behind my father's desk, smiling confidently, until the giant television behind him suddenly displayed an official corporate announcement reading, "Effective immediately, all executive authority has been transferred to the legal owner, Ethan Harrison. Every bank account, every voting right, every controlling share, and every international asset now belongs exclusively to Ethan Harrison." Complete silence filled the room. Daniel stared at the screen, unable to speak, as board members slowly stood up, collected their documents, and walked out without shaking his hand. Because within a single minute, the man who believed he owned a $6 billion empire had lost everything, and he still had no idea that I was already on my way to the headquarters, where our paths would finally cross face to face for the first time since my father's funeral. I arrived at Harrison Global headquarters just as hundreds of reporters gathered outside the building. Every television channel in America was broadcasting live, because nobody understood why the ownership of one of the largest companies in the country had changed. Within a few minutes, Daniel stood at the entrance, shouting at security guards, demanding they remove every board member who refused to obey him. But the moment I stepped out of my car, the entire security team immediately walked toward me. Instead of him, the chief of security handed me my father's old executive access card and respectfully welcomed me home, while every camera turned in my direction. Daniel looked at me with complete disbelief and laughed, saying, "You actually think you can take this company away from me?" Before I could answer, the chairman of the board walked outside carrying the original ownership certificate. He shook my hand in front of everyone and officially announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce the only legal owner and chairman of Harrison Global Holdings, Mr. Ethan Harrison." The crowd instantly exploded with questions. Reporters surrounded me, photographers captured every second, while Daniel desperately grabbed the documents, screaming, "They are fake, they are all fake." But one after another, every board member confirmed that the transfer had already been verified by international banks, government regulators, and the company's legal department. Daniel tried to enter the building using his executive card, but the access system displayed authorization denied. Then every office door, every executive account, every company vehicle, and every corporate system automatically locked him out in front of thousands of employees. His face turned completely white as the giant screen inside the lobby displayed a message saying, "All executive privileges for Daniel Harrison have been permanently revoked." He turned toward our relatives, expecting someone to defend him, but my stepmother lowered her eyes. My uncle quietly stepped backward, and every person who had mocked me at my father's funeral suddenly remained silent, because they finally realized the quiet son they had thrown out of the mansion was now the most powerful man in the company. And the greatest surprise was still waiting, because my father's final recorded message had not yet been played to the entire world. Walked into the main auditorium, where Thousands of employees were waiting while millions more watched the live broadcast across America. The chairman placed my father's final sealed envelope into my hands and said he wanted the entire world to hear these words only. After the true owner returned, I slowly opened the envelope and pressed play on the recorded message. My father's face appeared on the giant screen, and complete silence filled the hall. He smiled gently and said, "If you are watching this, then my oldest son has completed the greatest test of his life. Wealth never belonged to the smartest person or the strongest person. It belonged to the one whose character could survive betrayal. Ethan, if you were standing there today, then you proved you deserved everything I built because you never allowed hatred to control your heart. Daniel, if you are listening, understand this. I never disinherited you because I loved you less. I protected this company because your greed made you unfit to lead it." The recording ended, and the entire audience stood on their feet applauding. For several minutes, Daniel slowly walked toward me with tears in his eyes and quietly admitted, "I destroyed my own future because I wanted everything without earning it." I looked at him calmly and replied, "Our Father gave both of us the same opportunity. The difference was that I chose patience while you chose greed." I told security to let him leave peacefully because revenge had never been my goal. Over the next 2 years, Harrison Global became the fastest growing company in America. Employee salaries increased, thousands of new jobs were created, scholarships were established in my father's name, and hospitals, schools, and charities were funded across the country. One evening, I returned to the old lakeside cabin where everything had begun. I placed my father's watch on the wooden table, looked at the sunset over the lake, and whispered, "You were right, Dad. They could steal my house, they could steal my title, they could even steal my place in the family, but they could never steal my character, and that was the greatest inheritance you ever gave me." As I walked away, I finally understood that true wealth is never measured by billions of dollars or luxury buildings. It is measured by the kind of person you remain after everyone around you has betrayed you. And that was the moment I knew my father had never raised a billionaire. He had raised a man worthy of becoming one.